What if you suddenly lost everything and had no one by your side? The rain wasn't just falling, it was punishing, pouring down in sheets, turning the cracked sidewalks of downtown Los Angeles into mirror-like streams. Headlights sliced through the wet haze, illuminating trash blowing down the gutters and the slouched figures huddled under doorways and makeshift tents. On a corner near a bus stop that hadn't worked in months, a woman stood barefoot on wet concrete, her jeans soaked to the thigh, one arm curled around a little girl who looked too small to be out in weather like this. The woman wasn't shaking anymore, not because she wasn't cold, but because she was beyond it. She stood still, calm in the same way a candle is calm right before it gutters out. Her other hand clutched a cardboard sign that read, "Anything helps." Just food for her. Across the intersection, a midnight black Tesla rolled to a quiet stop. The woman didn't look up. She'd seen 100 cars slow down to stare. Sometimes they offered food or $1. More often, they passed with the windows up and the music louder. The Tesla didn't move. Inside, Elon Musk tapped the steering wheel slowly, his eyes narrowed. He had been on his way back from a small, private event where tech investors debated AI alignment and long-term species sustainability. He'd spoken for nearly 45 minutes about scaling solar energy to Mars. But his mind had wandered, especially during the dinner afterward. Now it was almost 1 a.m., and he was heading back to a quiet estate he hadn't really called home in years. He watched the woman hold her child, motionless. His hand hovered over the console. She looked no older than 30. Her shoulders were tight, her chin lifted just slightly against the cold, as if trying not to show weakness in front of her daughter. He opened the car door. The woman didn't flinch at the sound. Instead, she tightened her grip on the girl. "Hey," Elon said, stepping out with his coat raised against the downpour. "Do you two need a ride? Somewhere warm?" The woman's eyes darted up, green, sharp, calculating. "No," her voice was steady. "We're fine." "You're not fine," he said gently. "She's shaking. She's just tired. We'll find a shelter. It's late. Most are full. We know." Elon paused. "I can get you a hotel for the night. Just for the night. No catch." The woman looked him up and down. Her gaze lingered a second longer than most, as if trying to match the soaked figure to a memory. Then she shook her head. "Not safe to trust people at night. Even billionaires," he said with a half smile. "Especially them." A thin flicker of amusement crossed her face, then vanished. "Go home," she said, turning back toward the street. The little girl tugged weakly at her coat. Elon didn't move. He glanced down the street, then at the gas station nearby. Without another word, he turned and walked toward it. 15 minutes later, he returned with 2 warm meals in plastic bags, a thick blanket, and a large umbrella. He said nothing, simply set them at her feet, nodded once to the little girl, and returned to his car. The engine hummed quietly as the vehicle pulled away. Emily watched the car go until the taillights vanished into fog. She didn't touch the food at first. The kindness made her suspicious. But her daughter, Mia, tugged at the blanket with a muffled "Mama," and Emily relented. Under the umbrella, they sat and ate, the first warm thing in days passing through their lips. Mia laughed, actually laughed, when Emily let her lick the hot chocolate cup. That laugh, light and real, broke something inside Emily. She wiped her cheek quickly and whispered, "We'll be okay. I promise." In the Tesla, Elon drove slower than usual. He didn't know her name. Didn't know the kid's name either. But he felt something settle in his chest, a dull ache he couldn't quite explain. He had seen homelessness before. Given to shelters. Funded housing initiatives. But he had never locked eyes with a mother begging in the storm while holding her child like a shield. He tapped the wheel again. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The line echoed in his head from a podcast he'd listened to earlier, a creator who turned real stories into viral moments of compassion. Elon wasn't one for drama, but tonight something felt different. At home, the lights turned on automatically as he entered. The fire lit itself. The walls whispered updates from SpaceX, from Tesla, from the Boring Company. He ignored them all. Instead, he sat at the kitchen table, still damp, staring at the steam rising from the tea his assistant had programmed to brew on arrival. He picked up his phone and typed a note: "Find homeless mother and child seen at 8th and Main. Bring trusted help." Discreetly. Then he sat back and exhaled, as if making the note had shifted something permanent. Downtown, Emily tried to stay awake, afraid that sleep would mean someone taking Mia. But exhaustion hit like a wave. With her arms wrapped around the little girl and the blanket tightly pulled over both of them, she finally let her eyes close. For the first time in weeks, she didn't dream of being chased or lost. She dreamt of soft beds and warm smiles. She dreamt of electricity that didn't cut off and food that didn't come in brown paper bags. When she awoke, the rain had stopped, and the sun was cracking the sky with gold. Mia was still asleep, her cheeks pink and warm. The food tray sat empty beside them. And the cardboard sign? Gone. In its place was a handwritten note in thick black pen: "If you ever want help, just say yes next time." Emily stared at it, heart thudding. It wasn't the food. It wasn't the coat. It was the note. The simplicity of it. The message beneath the message. It said, "I'll come back." She folded it and tucked it inside her pocket. Across town, Elon was already in a meeting, but his mind drifted. His assistant, Jack, walked in mid-briefing and whispered, "We got a hit. The shelter on Alameda Street. They registered last night under no name, just mother and child. Want us to move?" Elon nodded once. Quietly. "Let's see if she wants to talk. If not, we keep watching. She'll say yes. Just not yet." That morning, as people drove to work and the city buzzed with its usual hurry, a quiet story had begun. A man the world knew for rockets, algorithms, and electric dreams had crossed paths with a woman no one knew at all, except for the little girl who called her Mama. Neither of them realized it yet, but something had shifted. Something small, and simple. A single act. A single moment. But sometimes, that's all it takes. A car slowing in the rain. A child laughing over hot chocolate. A note left behind. A yes not yet spoken, but waiting, somewhere just ahead. Emily Rose Carter was born in a faded brick house on the edge of Dayton, Ohio, during a thunderstorm in early April, 1994, when the trees were just beginning to bloom and the potholes from winter still hadn't been filled. Her mother, Angela, had been 23 and alone, screaming in the delivery room while her boyfriend of 3 months, who promised to stay, vanished the moment she went into labor. Emily never met him, never even saw a picture, just heard her mother mutter his name in disgust every now and then when the electricity got shut off or a landlord pounded on the door. Emily grew up in that house, or rather, around it. It wasn't really a home, just a series of rooms that changed color every year depending on what her mom could afford at the hardware store and how angry she was when she painted. By the time Emily was 6, she already knew how to hide in closets when visitors came over and how to make boxed macaroni on a stove with one working burner. Her mother had dreams once, big ones, to become a nurse, to travel, to be more than what her mother had been, but life kept clawing her back down, one mistake at a time. Angela drank a little at first, then more. Sometimes she laughed a lot when she drank, and sometimes she screamed at walls that weren't talking. Emily learned early that silence was her safest weapon. She grew up quiet, observant, with a sharpness that adults underestimated. At school, she was the kind of student teachers called bright but distracted, because her grades didn't match her test scores. She loved science and space, had posters of stars and planets above her bed, and dreamed of building machines that could escape gravity, not just physical, but emotional too. Her teachers said she had potential. Her mom said dreams were for rich kids. Still, Emily tried. She worked at a laundromat after school in 9th grade and used the Wi-Fi from the pizza place next door to study online. She had a sketchbook filled with designs, engines, solar panels, weird contraptions that could harvest rainwater or launch kites high enough to touch clouds. One day, a local science fair offered a scholarship prize, and Emily entered, staying up for nights to finish a solar-charged heating box made from leftover tin and broken calculators. She won second place. It should have been a moment of triumph, but when she brought the plaque home, her mother laughed and asked if it came with dinner. The next day, the plaque was gone. Probably pawned. Emily didn't ask. By senior year, she was on her own. Her mom had spiraled, jail, rehab, out again. Emily couch-surfed, stayed with a friend named Rachel for a while, and somehow still managed to graduate with a GPA high enough to get into a small community college nearby. But college wasn't what they promised. Financial aid ran out. Part-time jobs didn't pay enough. She tried waitressing, warehouse work, even considered enlisting in the military just for the housing. She held on, barely, until she met Michael. He was older, confident, said the right things. He wore clean clothes and spoke like he had the world figured out. Emily was 21. He was 28. It felt like love. It wasn't. Michael wasn't violent, not at first, just dismissive. Then possessive. Then controlling. By the time she realized she was pregnant, she'd lost most of her friends and was sleeping on a mattress on the floor of a studio apartment he said was temporary. Mia was born in July, during another storm, this time in Cincinnati, in a charity hospital with fluorescent lights that buzzed like a swarm of bees. Michael held her once, said, "She looks nothing like me," and left the next day. Emily never saw him again. She didn't cry. She held her daughter against her chest and promised something she had no idea how to keep, that she would never let anything hurt her. For a while, she managed. State assistance, diapers from the food bank, help from a church that didn't ask too many questions. Emily got a job cleaning offices at night while Mia stayed with a neighbor who smoked too much but loved babies. It wasn't much, but it was stable. For a while. Then the neighbor moved. The office job cut hours. Rent went up. And then came the eviction. The landlord gave her 3 days. Emily begged for an extension, offered half in cash. It didn't matter. She was out. She packed what she could in 2 bags, strapped Mia into a stroller, and walked until her feet blistered. Shelter after shelter turned her away, some because she didn't have paperwork, others because they were full. One worker looked at her and said, "You're not the worst I've seen. Try again tomorrow." She wanted to scream. But Mia was there, watching, needing her to be strong. She didn't scream. She smiled and said, "Let's go find a nice place for a nap." That night, they slept behind a bus stop. The night after, behind a gas station. Emily stopped counting days after a week. Her phone died. Her ID got stolen. She didn't even have a way to prove she was Mia's mother, not technically. And still, she kept going. Every morning, she washed Mia's face with bottled water and smiled like it was all an adventure. They'd pretend the concrete was a spaceship, or that puddles were rivers they had to cross with bravery. The little girl believed her. And that belief, the blind trust in her voice, her arms, her made-up stories, kept Emily from collapsing. She scavenged food, traded stories for socks, and kept her back straight even when men stared too long or police told her to move along. But it was the rain that broke her. Not the cold. Not the hunger. Not even the loneliness. It was that wet, bone-chilling rain that seemed to come from inside the sky, like the world itself was weeping. The kind of rain that got into your clothes and never left, that turned cardboard into sludge and blankets into weights. That was the rain she stood in when the black car pulled up and the man stepped out. She didn't know who he was, not really. She'd seen his face before, on screens, maybe a billboard once, but billionaires were like movie stars, part of a different universe. When he spoke, he didn't sound like a savior. He sounded tired. Not the kind of tired she felt in her bones, but the kind of tired that comes from a life of always moving, always performing. She could tell he wasn't used to being told no. That's why she said it. Not to be cruel. Just to prove to herself that she could. But when he returned with food, and a blanket, and didn't ask for anything in return, a crack appeared in her armor. Small. Barely noticeable. But real. And the next morning, when she found the note, something inside her stirred. Not hope. Not yet. But curiosity. That was new. She folded the note, stared at the single letter signed at the bottom, and whispered to Mia, "Maybe the world isn't all broken." The little girl just snored softly, mouth open, one arm flung over her stuffed giraffe, blissfully unaware. Emily leaned back against the shelter's brick wall, closed her eyes, and tried to imagine a world where stories had plot twists and not just sad endings. Maybe that world started with a letter. Maybe it started with saying yes. The city kept moving, humming with a rhythm that didn't pause for anyone. The buses screeched their way through crowded lanes, delivery trucks unloaded without a glance at the people curled up on sidewalks, and office towers flickered to life as morning commuters filtered in, lattes in hand, earpieces snugged, eyes glazed from screen time. Emily sat on the edge of the shelter's front steps, arms wrapped tightly around her knees, while Mia slept upstairs in a bunk bed that smelled faintly of mildew and hand sanitizer. The sun was bright now, almost offensively so, drying the sidewalk but not the weight in Emily's chest. It had been 3 days since the night in the rain. 3 days since the man with the Tesla, the food, and the blanket had spoken to her like she mattered. She had replayed his face 100 times in her head, wondering if it was real, if the note had been a prank or some kind of social experiment. That wasn't unheard of. She'd seen people film themselves helping the homeless only to disappear the second the camera stopped rolling. But something about him, the way he didn't ask questions, the way he didn't flinch when she told him no, the quiet way he left the note, made her hesitate. For once, it hadn't felt like pity. It had felt like an invitation. But what did you do when the world offered you something that didn't look like a trap? You questioned it. You waited. You stayed quiet. You survived. The shelter was better than the street, but not by much. The staff meant well, but they were overworked and underpaid, and everything ran on a tight schedule. Lights on at 6 a.m. breakfast line by 6:30. You had to be out by 8. No loitering. No returning until 5 p.m. Emily kept Mia close, looping a broken purse strap through the child's coat zipper to keep her tethered. They went to the park some days, other days just sat at the library where the air conditioning worked and no one asked questions. Emily read books to Mia in soft whispers, losing herself in made-up lands of dragons and princesses and people who always found their way home. Each day blended into the next. The city never slowed down. People walked past her like she was a crack in the pavement, unavoidable but unseen. She learned to keep her head down, to not take up space. It was safer that way. But something had shifted inside her. That note. That signature. Just a single D. It burned a small, persistent light into the darkness of her thoughts. Somewhere in that city, someone had seen her and hadn't looked away. Not like the others. She told herself not to believe in it, but part of her already did. She couldn't help it. Meanwhile, across the city, Elon Musk sat in a windowless conference room surrounded by engineers debating the thermal dynamics of the next Starship prototype. He should have been focused. These meetings cost millions in missed productivity if they ran too long, but he kept zoning out, running calculations of a different kind. How many people like Emily were in the city? In the country? Why did one face keep surfacing in his mind out of thousands he passed every week? He wasn't trying to play savior. He wasn't trying to make headlines. If anything, he wanted to keep this quiet. But something about the look in her eyes had grabbed him, like she was already gone but hadn't realized it yet. That haunted him more than he cared to admit. Jack, his assistant, leaned down to whisper, "We found her. Still at the same shelter. You want to make contact?" Elon nodded slowly. "Wait until she leaves. No cameras. Just you." Jack hesitated. "You're sure about this?" "No," Elon said, "but I'm not doing it because I'm sure. I'm doing it because no one else will." Jack left, and Elon returned to the meeting, his mind already back on her. Outside the shelter that afternoon, Emily saw the man again. Not the one from the car, but someone new, clean-cut, polite, nervous. He approached slowly, like someone trying not to scare a bird. "Hi," he said, hands out in front of him like he was unarmed. "I'm Jack. You don't know me, but someone you met the other night asked me to check on you." Emily stood instantly, her hand on Mia's shoulder, her eyes wide. "I don't want anything." "That's okay," Jack said quickly. "We're not here to force anything. He just wanted to make sure you're okay. That's all." Emily didn't speak. She didn't run either. Jack continued, "There's a hotel room. Paid for. No cameras. No names. Just a place to shower, sleep, and eat. He said you'd probably say no, but he wanted to offer anyway." Emily looked down at Mia, whose face was sticky with juice from breakfast, her shoes 2 sizes too big. Her jaw clenched. "Just for one night?" "Just one," Jack nodded. Emily thought for a long second, then another. Finally, she said, "Okay." That night, in a hotel room with clean sheets and blackout curtains, Emily stood in front of a mirror with hot water steaming behind her and Mia snoring gently under a down comforter. Her reflection looked alien. Pale, tired, but almost human again. She touched the ends of her hair, which she had cut herself with safety scissors in a gas station bathroom. Her clothes hung from her bones. But in her eyes, something flickered. Survival. She stepped into the shower and let the water run until it turned her skin pink. It felt like a baptism, not religious, but something reborn anyway. Down the hall, Jack sat in a rental car, texting Elon updates. "They're in. No trouble. Room 712. Elon read the message from a rooftop in Hawthorne, surrounded by distant city lights and the buzz of test engines somewhere underground. He didn't reply, just tucked the phone into his pocket and exhaled. Emily stayed in that room for 2 nights. The second night came with a knock and a fresh bag of clothes and shoes that actually fit Mia. No questions. No instructions. Just a card that read, "When you're ready, call. Or don't. You owe no one anything." Emily cried for the first time in months. Quietly, so Mia wouldn't wake. Not from fear, but from the strange ache of being treated with dignity. She didn't call. Not yet. But she memorized the number. The world outside still moved on, fast and cruel and indifferent. But for once, Emily didn't feel left behind. She felt noticed. And that was a start. On the 3rd day, she stepped outside with Mia and looked up at the sky. It was overcast, gray and soft like wool, and for the first time in what felt like years, she didn't dread what it might bring. She pulled the child close and whispered, "We're still here." It wasn't hope. Not yet. But it was no longer despair. It was something in between. And that something was enough. Emily didn't call the number, not even once. She kept the card folded in her coat pocket, a soft, worn square she touched sometimes when the world pressed in too hard. It wasn't that she didn't want help, it was that she didn't trust the shape of it. Help always came with strings. She had learned that early. Sometimes the string was money you had to pay back. Sometimes it was gratitude you were expected to perform like a trained animal. Sometimes it was silence, keeping your head down because the person who gave you something could take it all away. But this stranger, Elon Musk, hadn't followed any of the rules she knew. He didn't ask for thanks. He didn't post her face online. He didn't even follow up after giving her 2 nights in a hotel and a bag of clothes. Still, she didn't call. She wasn't ready. Not yet. So she and Mia returned to the shelter and stayed another week. The staff didn't question her absence, people came and went all the time. As long as you signed in before curfew, you were just another face in the crowd. But Emily felt the difference. Something about her posture changed. She stood straighter, made eye contact with other women in the line, started volunteering to help serve dinner. Mia looked healthier too. She smiled more, had color in her cheeks again. Emily found an old pair of headphones in the donation box and plugged them into a public tablet at the library. She searched for Elon Musk. Not because she was obsessed, but because she needed to understand. She had known his name, of course. Everyone had. The guy who launched cars into space and talked about putting cities on Mars. The billionaire. The genius. The controversial figure who always seemed one tweet away from global headlines. But watching him speak in videos, reading his interviews, Emily felt something else. He wasn't like the other rich men she had heard about. He seemed awkward, strangely earnest. When he talked about the future, it wasn't about legacy, it was about solving problems. Fixing things. Not everything he did made sense, but she could see a pattern. He didn't let the world tell him no. And more importantly, he noticed things other people ignored. Including her. She started to wonder why. Why her? Why stop that night? Why come back? Why send someone to check on her and then disappear again? The questions ate at her more than the hunger ever had. She dreamed about him. Nothing romantic, just flashes. His eyes in the rain. His voice asking if they were okay. The way he left the food and didn't wait for thanks. That kind of presence stuck with you. One afternoon, while Mia napped in her bunk and the shelter hummed with the dull murmur of too many people in too small a space, Emily pulled the card out of her coat and stared at the number. Her thumb hovered over the call button for almost a full minute before she put it away again. She wasn't ready. Not yet. But the next day, the stranger showed up again. Not Elon. Jack. He was back, standing outside the shelter's fence, dressed the same, clean jeans, gray hoodie, watch that probably cost more than the shelter's yearly food budget. He didn't wave this time. Just waited. When Emily stepped outside, he nodded once, respectful, like he knew not to push. He wants to talk, Jack said. Just talk. Why? Emily asked. Jack shrugged. He doesn't say why. He just listens when something sticks with him. You stuck. I didn't ask to. That's probably why you did. Emily didn't respond. Jack handed her a paper bag. Inside was a notebook, a pen, and a disposable phone. No pressure, he said. You call when you want. Or don't. Just thought you might like something that's yours. Then he left. Emily opened the notebook that night after lights out, using the flicker from the hallway to see. She didn't write a letter. She made lists. List of things she remembered from her childhood. List of things she wanted Mia to have one day. List of questions she'd ask Elon if she ever saw him again. List of things she couldn't forgive. List of things she wished she could forget. She wrote until her hand cramped. It felt like taking inventory of her soul. The next morning, she looked at the disposable phone. It had no internet, just a call and text feature. Simple. Safe. She didn't turn it on. Not yet. A few more days passed. Then one evening, as she and Mia sat under a tree in a nearby park, watching pigeons fight over a cracker, Emily turned the phone on. No messages. No contacts. One number stored under D. She didn't call. She texted. Just one word, why? The reply came almost instantly. Because I saw someone I couldn't walk past. She stared at it for a long time. Then typed, what do you want from me? Nothing. That was all. No follow-up. No push. Just the silence of someone who meant it. Emily waited hours before replying again. So why keep showing up? The answer came 10 minutes later. Because I remember what it's like to be invisible. And I don't think you should be. She didn't sleep that night. Something cracked open in her chest. It wasn't a rescue, it was recognition. And that was somehow harder to accept. The next morning, she sent one more text, you still want to talk? Yes, came the reply. Name a time and place. She picked a public cafe with outdoor seating near the shelter. Neutral ground. Busy enough to feel safe. The next day, at exactly 2 p.m., a black Tesla pulled up across the street. This time, she watched him step out. Elon Musk didn't look like a billionaire. He wore jeans, a black jacket, and the kind of shoes you'd never guess cost more than your rent. He looked tired. Normal. But his eyes were sharp. They met hers without hesitation. Mind if I sit? He asked. You're already here, she said. He smiled. Saturday. There was silence at first. Not awkward. Just cautious. Finally, Emily said, I don't understand why me. Elon leaned forward, hands clasped. I don't understand it either. I just knew I had to stop. That's not normal for me. I barely stop for sleep. You didn't look shocked, she said. Most people either pity or avoid us. I don't pity people who survive. He said it simply. With weight. She stared at him. You think I'm surviving? You're doing more than most people would. So what now? She asked. You save me. No, he said. I offer you a step forward. If you want it. You don't owe me anything. I just can't stop thinking about what happens to people like you when no one sees them. Emily looked down at her hands. Then up at her daughter, who was trying to feed a bird crumbs from a muffin. I want more than just surviving, she said. For her. Then let's figure it out. Together. That word, together, echoed louder than it should have. Emily didn't smile. But she didn't walk away. For the first time in years, she stayed in the moment without calculating her exit. Elon reached into his coat and pulled out a small envelope. Job placement. Training. Housing voucher. All anonymous. You decide the pace. I don't even need your last name. She took it, slowly. This doesn't make sense, she said. Kindness rarely does, Elon replied. She held the envelope, looked at him for a long beat, and nodded. Not yes. Not yet. But almost. Emily didn't open the envelope right away. After Elon slid it across the metal cafe table, she stared at it as if it might dissolve in her hands if touched too soon, as if whatever lived inside it was too heavy for someone like her to carry. She tucked it into the inside pocket of her coat, next to the notebook and the disposable phone, and told herself she'd look at it later, after dinner, after Mia's bath, after lights out at the shelter when the snoring chorus of a dozen women around her made the night feel like it would last forever. But later came and went. She couldn't bring herself to open it that first night. It wasn't fear exactly. It was something more complicated, more layered. Fear of hope, maybe. Fear of stepping into something and realizing she wasn't ready, or worse, realizing she'd never be ready. People always thought the hardest part about starting over was getting resources. No. It was the emotional math, calculating whether you were still worth saving, wondering if all the mess behind you had permanently contaminated the road ahead. When Mia drifted off to sleep with her tiny hand curled around Emily's thumb, Emily held her breath and listened to the silence press down on her. The envelope pressed against her ribs like ate the food and didn't wait for thanks. That kind of presence stuck with you. One afternoon, while Mia napped in her bunk and the shelter hummed with the dull murmur of too many people in too small a space, Emily pulled the card out of her coat and stared at the number. Her thumb hovered over the call button for almost a full minute before she put it away again. She wasn't ready. Not yet. But the next day, the stranger showed up again. Not Elon. Jack. He was back, standing outside the shelter's fence, dressed the same, clean jeans, gray hoodie, watch that probably cost more than the shelter's yearly food budget. He didn't wave this time. Just waited. When Emily stepped outside, he nodded once, respectful, like he knew not to push. He wants to talk, Jack said. Just talk. Why? Emily asked. Jack shrugged. He doesn't say why. He just listens when something sticks with him. You stuck. I didn't ask to. That's probably why you did. Emily didn't respond. Jack handed her a paper bag. Inside was a notebook, a pen, and a disposable phone. No pressure, he said. You call when you want. Or don't. Just thought you might like something that's yours. Then he left. Emily opened the notebook that night after lights out, using the flicker from the hallway to see. She didn't write a letter. She made lists. List of things she remembered from her childhood. List of things she wanted Mia to have one day. List of questions she'd ask Elon if she ever saw him again. List of things she couldn't forgive. List of things she wished she could forget. She wrote until her hand cramped. It felt like taking inventory of her soul. The next morning, she looked at the disposable phone. It had no internet, just a call and text feature. Simple. Safe. She didn't turn it on. Not yet. A few more days passed. Then one evening, as she and Mia sat under a tree in a nearby park, watching pigeons fight over a cracker, Emily turned the phone on. No messages. No contacts. One number stored under D. She didn't call. She texted. Just one word, why? The reply came almost instantly. Because I saw someone I couldn't walk past. She stared at it for a long time. Then typed, what do you want from me? Nothing. That was all. No follow-up. No push. Just the silence of someone who meant it. Emily waited hours before replying again. So why keep showing up? The answer came 10 minutes later. Because I remember what it's like to be invisible. And I don't think you should be. She didn't sleep that night. Something cracked open in her chest. It wasn't a rescue, it was recognition. And that was somehow harder to accept. The next morning, she sent one more text, you still want to talk? Yes, came the reply. Name a time and place. She picked a public cafe with outdoor seating near the shelter. Neutral ground. Busy enough to feel safe. The next day, at exactly 2 p.m., a black Tesla pulled up across the street. This time, she watched him step out. Elon Musk didn't look like a billionaire. He wore jeans, a black jacket, and the kind of shoes you'd never guess cost more than your rent. He looked tired. Normal. But his eyes were sharp. They met hers without hesitation. Mind if I sit? He asked. You're already here, she said. He smiled. Saturday. There was silence at first. Not awkward. Just cautious. Finally, Emily said, I don't understand why me. Elon leaned forward, hands clasped. I don't understand it either. I just knew I had to stop. That's not normal for me. I barely stop for sleep. You didn't look shocked, she said. Most people either pity or avoid us. I don't pity people who survive. He said it simply. With weight. She stared at him. You think I'm surviving? You're doing more than most people would. So what now? She asked. You save me. No, he said. I offer you a step forward. If you want it. You don't owe me anything. I just can't stop thinking about what happens to people like you when no one sees them. Emily looked down at her hands. Then up at her daughter, who was trying to feed a bird crumbs from a muffin. I want more than just surviving, she said. For her. Then let's figure it out. Together. That word, together, echoed louder than it should have. Emily didn't smile. But she didn't walk away. For the first time in years, she stayed in the moment without calculating her exit. Elon reached into his coat and pulled out a small envelope. Job placement. Training. Housing voucher. All anonymous. You decide the pace. I don't even need your last name. She took it, slowly. This doesn't make sense, she said. Kindness rarely does, Elon replied. She held the envelope, looked at him for a long beat, and nodded. Not yes. Not yet. But almost. Emily didn't open the envelope right away. After Elon slid it across the metal cafe table, she stared at it as if it might dissolve in her hands if touched too soon, as if whatever lived inside it was too heavy for someone like her to carry. She tucked it into the inside pocket of her coat, next to the notebook and the disposable phone, and told herself she'd look at it later, after dinner, after Mia's bath, after lights out at the shelter when the snoring chorus of a dozen women around her made the night feel like it would last forever. But later came and went. She couldn't bring herself to open it that first night. It wasn't fear exactly. It was something more complicated, more layered. Fear of hope, maybe. Fear of stepping into something and realizing she wasn't ready, or worse, realizing she'd never be ready. People always thought the hardest part about starting over was getting resources. No. It was the emotional math, calculating whether you were still worth saving, wondering if all the mess behind you had permanently contaminated the road ahead. When Mia drifted off to sleep with her tiny hand curled around Emily's thumb, Emily held her breath and listened to the silence press down on her. The envelope pressed against her ribs like a heartbeat. She woke early the next morning and took Mia to the public library again. It was one of the few places in the city where nobody asked you to buy anything, where you could exist without being accused of loitering or threatening someone's idea of clean. They sat at the far end of the children's section under a faded mural of smiling animals reading books, and Emily let Mia color with crayons while she slowly opened the envelope with hands that trembled despite her effort to steady them. Inside was a packet. Not thick, not formal, just a few neatly folded pages clipped together. A brief letter, typed. No company logo. No signature besides a single handwritten E. It read, Emily, what follows is a chance. Not a solution. Not a promise. But a doorway. Step through it, or don't. This is yours, not mine. There are no cameras. No press. No expectations. If you decide to walk this path, instructions are enclosed. I'll never ask you to thank me. But I hope you'll let me keep rooting for you from a distance. E. She paused, breath caught halfway between a sob and a scoff. The pages beneath the note included 3 options, each printed with brief descriptions. First. Transitional housing placement, including 6 months of subsidized rent in a unit close to a city daycare, already pre-approved and waiting. Second. Enrollment in a tech training program geared toward single parents, covering coding, digital literacy, and certifications, with a stipend and guaranteed job placement through one of Elon's partnered startups. Third, private therapy sessions through an affiliated clinic specializing in trauma and recovery, no paperwork, no questions. Each path could be started independently or in combination. A note at the bottom read, "You are not broken. You are in motion." Emily read the line 3 times. It was the first time anyone had acknowledged that what she was going through didn't define her, that it was part of a larger story not yet finished. Mia tugged her sleeve. "Mama, look. Purple fish." Emily looked down at the child's crayon sketch. A fish, crooked and brilliant, swimming across the page like it didn't care what kind of water it was in. Emily smiled, kissed her daughter's forehead, and whispered, "I think we're going to swim too." That evening, after Mia fell asleep, Emily didn't wait for fear to catch up. She borrowed the shelter's front desk phone and called the number listed on the first page of the packet. A woman answered. Warm voice. No judgment. "Hi, this is Ava. You've reached the housing team. Are you calling for placement or information?" Emily hesitated only for a second. "Placement. Name." Emily looked at the packet. The top page read, "No legal name required. Use any name you're comfortable with. We'll figure it out later." "M," she said. "Just M." "Okay, M," Ava replied, "I have a unit available on 5th and Vine. It's small, 1 bedroom, but furnished and walkable to just about everything. We can hold it for 72 hours if you want to see it first." "I do. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. There'll be someone there to give you a tour. No pressure. If you like it, we'll move forward. If not, we'll find another." Emily hung up and stared at the receiver. For the first time in a long time, she felt something push back against the weight she carried, not enough to lift it, but enough to make it shift. That night she dreamed of rooms with doors that locked from the inside, of walls that didn't shake when trucks drove by, of a place where Mia's laughter didn't have to compete with shouting. She didn't tell anyone at the shelter. She kept the news quiet, like a secret garden sprouting roots underground. The next morning, she dressed Mia in the cleanest clothes they had left and walked to the address, heart thudding with each step like it might give out. The building was older but cared for, beige brick, flower boxes in the front windows, a small ramp leading to the entrance. A woman named Carmen met her inside, smiling without looking down at her clipboard. She had warm eyes and an easy laugh. "You must be M," she said. "Let's take a look." The apartment was tiny. 1 bedroom, yes, but it had a real door that closed, and the bed had a headboard. The couch didn't smell like strangers. The kitchen had a little stove, the kind that clicked before it lit, and a fridge already stocked with basic food items. There was a card on the counter that read, "Welcome home." Emily stood in the center of the living room and felt dizzy. Carmen noticed. "Too much?" she asked gently. "No," Emily said. "Just enough. You can move in today if you're ready." "I don't have anything," Emily said. Carmen smiled. "That's okay. We've got enough for now." An hour later, Emily and Mia walked through the apartment door carrying nothing but their coats and a backpack with a giraffe tucked inside. It was enough. That evening, she sat on the bed and texted the number saved under D. Just 2 words, "We're in." Elon's reply came seconds later. "Proud of you." She stared at it, unsure why that made her cry. She typed, "Still scared." He responded, "Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to walk anyway." She set the phone down, curled up next to her daughter, and stared at the ceiling. There were no sirens. No shouting. No flickering bulbs. Just silence and the slow, steady breath of a child finally safe. For the first time in years, Emily slept without waking. And when she opened her eyes the next morning, something else woke up too, the part of her that believed again. Not in miracles. Not in men in suits with too much money. But in herself. The envelope hadn't saved her. It had reminded her she was still allowed to choose something better. Emily woke before the sun, the quiet, unfamiliar and almost eerie. For the first few seconds, she thought she'd overslept at the shelter, her body still wired to the 6 a.m. scramble, her mind expecting the hum of too many people in too small a space. But there was no coughing from the bunk below her, no metal springs groaning as someone turned over in sleep. No fluorescent lights flickering to life. Just silence. Real silence. And a soft breathing beside her. Mia lay curled up in the blankets, her thumb in her mouth, one foot sticking out from under the covers like it always did. Emily reached over and tucked it in, then slipped off the bed without waking her. The apartment still felt foreign, like stepping into someone else's skin. Everything was so still. No one watching. No one rushing her. The fridge held food, actual food, not pre-packaged snacks from the shelter or leftovers from a soup kitchen. There was bread. Eggs. A small carton of milk. And on the table, still unopened, was the second folder from the envelope, the one labeled Skills Forward Program, for single parents. She hadn't touched it since moving in. Housing had been the emergency, the first mountain to climb. Now that they had a roof, the next steps loomed larger. What would she do next? Who was she outside of survival? She made herself a piece of toast and sat by the window, watching the sky shift slowly from deep gray to light blue. The city outside moved differently now that she wasn't looking up from the sidewalk. From this second-floor view, it looked almost manageable. Not soft, but possible. She opened the folder. The first page was simple, a path, not a prescription. That phrase again. Whoever wrote this stuff seemed to understand people like her. There was a schedule for upcoming virtual orientation sessions, offered on a rolling basis. Childcare support included. Remote access available. A prepaid tablet already shipped to the apartment, arriving within 24 hours. All she had to do was say yes. At the bottom of the page was a phone number with a name beside it, Marcus, enrollment mentor. No pressure. No hard sell. Just, call if and when you're ready. She sipped her coffee and stared at the number. It felt surreal, like someone had handed her a secret key to a part of life she'd always believed was locked tight to people like her. And still, part of her waited for the catch. The fine print. The test. There had always been hoops to jump, always people asking for more proof that she deserved a second chance. But none of that had come yet. Maybe it wouldn't. Mia woke around 7, yawning and asking if they could make pancakes. Emily laughed. We have eggs and bread. You want French toast? Mia cheered like it was her birthday. Emily made it in a pan that still smelled new. They sat at the table together, and for the first time in forever, breakfast wasn't rushed. Wasn't rationed. Mia asked if they could go to the park afterward, and Emily said yes without having to check if it was safe or if they had enough bus fare to get back. The walk to the park was short. The city still moved fast around them, but Emily walked a little taller. She wasn't just passing through anymore. She had an address. She had keys. At the park, she watched Mia race between the swings and the slide, hair flying, cheeks red, shoes finally her size. Other parents were there, sipping coffee, scrolling on phones, pushing strollers with tired ease. Emily felt out of place and yet not unwelcome. She wondered how many of them had stories they'd never tell. She sat on a bench and pulled out the disposable phone. She stared at Marcus's number. Then, without letting herself overthink, she dialed. Hello, a warm voice answered on the second ring. Hi. This is Emily. I got your info from the program folder. Emily. Hey, great to hear from you. No pressure at all, are you looking to enroll or just gathering info? Info. For now. That's totally fine. I'm here to walk with you at whatever pace makes sense. We've got orientation slots this week. Some are online, others in person. Want me to send you a few options? Yes. Online is better, with my daughter and everything. Got it. Texting them now. Pick what feels good, and let me know. And Emily? Yeah. You're not behind. You're right on time. She didn't know how to respond to that. So she just said, thanks, and hung up. When the text came through with 3 options for sessions, she picked one 2 days out. Enough time to get her head straight. Enough time to build courage. Back at the apartment that afternoon, a package arrived. The tablet. It was already set up with her name, just M, and a calendar with the orientation session already marked. The simplicity of it undid her a little. She'd been expecting walls, not bridges. That night, after Mia fell asleep, Emily curled up on the couch with the tablet and browsed the training modules. Basic HTML. Introduction to UX Design. Tech Support Pathways. Even Entrepreneurship. She couldn't believe these were the same skills she'd heard about other people using to build 6-figure lives. Now they were being offered to her. Free. On purpose. With encouragement. Something in her began to believe. Not fully, not blindly, but enough to let hope take one unsteady breath. The next morning, she texted Elon. Signed up for orientation. 2 days from now. His reply was instant. Proud of you. Keep going. She stared at that message. Proud of you. She hadn't heard those words in years. Maybe ever. They sounded strange and warm, like a coat 2 sizes too big. But maybe she'd grow into them. That afternoon, Emily met with Carmen, the housing manager, who showed her how to request maintenance, how to get bus passes, and gave her a prepaid grocery card for the month. How are you settling in? Carmen asked. It's quiet, Emily said. I'm still getting used to that. That's normal, Carmen smiled. It takes a while to stop bracing for the worst. I keep waiting for someone to take it back, Emily admitted. For someone to say this was a mistake. Carmen reached across the small kitchen table and tapped her hand. No mistake. You are where you're meant to be. The only thing left now is deciding what you want next. What she wanted. Not just what she needed to survive, but what she wanted. That question lived in her chest for the rest of the day. That evening, she wrote in her notebook again, something she hadn't done since the shelter. This time, it wasn't a list. It was a sentence. I want to feel like I belong. She stared at it until the words burned into her brain. Then she added another line. And I want to build something my daughter can be proud of. She didn't know what that would look like yet. But she was starting to believe it could exist. Orientation came 2 days later. She dressed in the best clothes they had, cleaned the living room, and set Mia up with snacks and crayons. The session started on time, led by a woman named Tasha who had once been in the same program and now ran a 6-figure consulting business. There were 10 other participants, all muted on the video call, their faces reflecting the same mixture of nervousness and disbelief. You're here because someone believed you could do more, Tasha said. And now it's your turn to believe it too. Emily listened. Took notes. Asked a question. And when it ended, she signed up for the beginner UX track. Just like that, she was a student. A builder. A future something. She texted Elon again. First class is Monday. His reply came with a thumbs-up emoji and one word, forward. That night, as she tucked Mia into bed, Emily whispered, "We're doing this, baby." Mia blinked sleepily. "We're not homeless anymore." Emily swallowed the lump in her throat. No, honey. We're home. And she meant it. Emily didn't sleep much the night before her first class. Not because she was scared, it wasn't fear anymore, but because something had shifted inside her, something that made her mind race in ways it hadn't for years. She kept rehearsing what the day would look like, picturing herself logging into the virtual classroom, hearing her name called and roll, trying not to sound too eager or too unsure. She had laid out her clothes the night before, jeans that actually fit, a soft blue sweater from the donation closet that made her look, in her own words, like someone who works at an office or something. She gave Mia an extra long hug before dropping her off at the city daycare program that came with the housing voucher. Mia had cried at first, not because she didn't want to go, but because she didn't want her mom to be alone. "You're not sad, right?" she'd asked, gripping Emily's hand with tiny, serious fingers. "You have friends too." "I have people now," Emily had said. And it was the truth. She had Carmen. She had Marcus. She had Elon, even if he was more like a distant, quiet force than an actual friend. And now, she would have classmates. A new identity was forming, and it scared her a little. Not in the way that danger scared her, but in the way that mattered. The kind of fear that meant growth. At exactly 10 a.m., she clicked the Zoom link. The waiting screen loaded with a calming gray background and a soft chime. Then faces started appearing, one by one, like puzzle pieces in a story she hadn't joined until now. Most of them looked tired. A few looked terrified. And then there was Tasha, again, her screen front and center. Same calm presence. Same smile. "Welcome, everyone," she said. "You made it. That's the hardest part." Emily almost laughed at that. Showing up? No. Surviving had been the hardest part. But she understood what Tasha meant. Showing up for something new, something chosen, that was hard in a different way. It was the first time in years she was participating in something where she wasn't just being helped, but building toward helping herself. "Let's start with one thing you're hoping to learn," Tasha continued. "You can unmute or type in the chat. No wrong answers." Emily's fingers hovered over the keyboard. She watched a few people type, "How to get a job, I want to work from home, I want to make my son proud, I just want to be able to pay my own rent." Then Emily wrote, "I want to build something that belongs to me." A few seconds later, someone replied to her message with a simple, "Yes." And someone else posted, "Same." That tiny chorus of strangers agreeing with her words felt like an invisible hand reaching across the screen to hold hers. The class started with the basics: what UX, user experience, actually meant, how design affects people's decisions, how understanding the user's emotional journey was as important as understanding software. Emily took notes so fast her fingers cramped. It wasn't just the information, it was the fact that she understood it. Not all of it, but enough. Enough to realize she wasn't lost. She wasn't behind. She was learning. During a breakout session, she was paired with a woman named Rosa from Florida and a man named Devontae from Detroit. Rosa had 3 kids and wanted to work remotely so she could stay home with them. Devontae used to drive trucks but had back issues and needed a career change. They shared their stories quickly, unpolished, real. No one was pretending to be anything other than what they were, people trying. "I used to think tech was for rich kids," Devontae said. "Now I'm thinking it's for people who didn't quit." Emily smiled at that. After the session ended, Tasha reminded them that mental health services were available as part of the program. "We're not just training minds," she said. "We're healing lives. Don't feel like you have to do one without the other." Emily had never done therapy. She'd sat through court-mandated counseling once, after leaving Mia's father for the final time. But that had felt more like surveillance than support. Still, the thought tugged at her. Maybe she was finally in a place where talking about the past wouldn't unravel her completely. She opened the tablet's preloaded apps and found the therapy booking option. Just 3 taps, choose provider, select date, confirm. Simple. Everything about this program was simple in design, yet enormous in impact. By the end of that first class, she felt like her brain had done 100 sit-ups. Not just in learning, but in believing. She texted Marcus. Finished day 1. Loved it. Surprised myself. He replied almost instantly, knew you would. Keep it up. Let me know when you want to meet one-on-one. We can plan your track together. She hadn't realized how much she needed that kind of support, someone tracking her progress without pressure. That evening, she and Mia made spaghetti and ate on real plates. They didn't talk about the shelter, or the rain, or the nights they'd cried together on cold floors. They talked about the future. Mia wanted to be an artist. Or a scientist. Or both. You can be anything, Emily said, her voice catching. So can you, Mia replied. And somehow, it didn't sound like a child repeating what she'd heard. It sounded like truth. After dinner, Emily logged into the learning platform again. There were extra materials to review, videos, articles, design exercises. She didn't have to do them. No one was making her. But she wanted to. She spent 2 hours clicking, reading, drawing wireframes on scrap paper. For the first time in as long as she could remember, she didn't feel like a victim of circumstance. She felt like someone with a plan. A student. A future professional. She opened the notebook again before bed. This time, she didn't write a list. She wrote a letter. Not to Elon. To herself. Dear Emily, you didn't give up. You waited, you hurt, you struggled, but you never gave up. Even when you thought you did, you didn't. Because here you are, writing this. Learning things. Raising a bright little girl. Building something new. I'm proud of you. Not just for surviving, but for trying again. Keep going. Keep choosing. The world didn't make it easy for you. But you showed up anyway. And that matters more than anything. She signed it simply, Love, Me. The next morning, she woke up and opened her tablet to start the second day of class. And for the first time, she didn't feel like an imposter. She felt like she belonged. Emily sat in front of the tablet for 5 full minutes before clicking Join Session. The small therapy icon on the screen pulsed gently, as if it were waiting with patience she hadn't earned. She'd booked the appointment on a whim, maybe even a dare to herself, after the first class, thinking, what if I finally said the things out loud? What if I stopped pretending the past didn't scrape at my insides every time I tried to move forward? But now, staring at her reflection in the dark glass, all her doubts returned. What if she said too much? What if she didn't know where to begin? What if the therapist looked at her and thought, you're just another burned-out charity case trying to patch yourself together with duct tape and good intentions? She adjusted the angle of the camera, smoothing her sweater and pushing her hair behind her ears. Mia was at daycare, the apartment was quiet, and she had no excuses left. So she tapped the icon. The screen shifted, and a face appeared. Calm, mid-30s maybe, with short curly hair and eyes that didn't blink too much. Hi, Emily. I'm Dr. Rachel Blake. You can call me Rachel, if that's more comfortable. Thanks for showing up. Emily swallowed hard and nodded. Hi. No pressure today, Rachel said gently. We don't have to get into anything heavy unless you want to. We can just talk. Emily blinked. I'm not sure what to say. Then let's start there, Rachel smiled. Tell me why you booked this. Even one sentence is enough. Emily exhaled slowly. Because I want to stop living like I'm still drowning. Even when I'm not. Rachel nodded. That's a very clear reason. And very human. Silence stretched between them for a second, but it wasn't awkward. It was space. Space for honesty. Can I ask you a question? Emily said. Of course. Why would someone like Elon Musk pay for people like me to be in this program? I mean, we're not exactly profitable. Rachel didn't smile, but her expression softened. I don't know him personally, she said, but I think he understands something most people ignore. That every great mind, every brilliant innovator, every strong parent was once just a person trying to survive. It's not about charity. It's about reinvesting in possibility. That hit something deep in Emily's chest, and she hated how her eyes started to sting immediately. I'm tired of being a possibility, she said. I want to be real. I want to be actual. Rachel leaned forward slightly, her tone still even. You are real. The fact that you're here, showing up, wanting more, that's not theoretical. That's as real as it gets. Emily looked down, twisting her fingers in her lap. I had this moment in the shelter, where I told myself I couldn't do it anymore. That maybe my daughter would be better off with someone stable. Someone who had money and answers. Rachel didn't interrupt. But then she cried, and I looked at her, and I knew that even if I had nothing else, I had to keep going. Just for her. That's love, Rachel said. Not perfection. Not heroism. Just showing up again and again. Love isn't a feeling. It's a choice we make in the middle of the storm. Emily wiped her eyes quickly. Why does it still hurt? I'm safe now. I have a place. I'm learning. But I still wake up and flinch, like the floor's going to disappear. Because your nervous system hasn't caught up yet, Rachel replied calmly. You've been surviving on adrenaline and instinct for years. Your body doesn't know how to rest. It doesn't know the danger's gone. Therapy helps teach it. Not in a day. Not in a week. But over time. So what? I just talk about it all until it doesn't hurt. Not exactly. You tell the truth about what happened. And we find where your strength lived inside those stories. You don't erase the past, you rewrite your relationship to it. That's how healing works. Emily was silent. Then she asked, do you think some people are just broken? Rachel shook her head. I think people are wounded. Some deeper than others. But wounds aren't failures. They're the body trying to heal. The mind does the same thing if we let it. Emily looked at the clock. The session had flown by. I didn't even get to half of what I wanted to say. That's okay. You don't have to empty the ocean in one session. You just have to dip your hand in. Can I book another? You can book as many as you want. Rachel smiled. Same time next week? Emily nodded. Yeah. That sounds good. After they disconnected, Emily sat in silence, blinking back the last of the tears. The strange thing was, she didn't feel weaker for crying. She felt cleaner. Like someone had cracked open a window in a stale room. That afternoon, she picked Mia up from daycare and walked her home through the park. They stopped at the swings, and Emily pushed her daughter gently, over and over, until the sun dipped low behind the buildings. Mommy, why do you look shiny? Mia asked. Emily laughed. What do you mean, shiny? Like your eyes are glittery. I think it's because I was brave today. Like a superhero? Something like that. Then you have to have a name, Mia said seriously. All superheroes have names. Emily thought for a moment. How about Rebuilder? Rebuilder Mom. Mia shouted and leapt off the swing into her arms. Emily caught her easily, spinning her in a circle. That night, she cooked rice and beans and watched a video on user interface principles while Mia colored at the kitchen table. After bedtime, Emily opened her notebook again. This time, she wrote a list. Not of things she'd lost, but of things she'd reclaimed: my time. My space. My voice. My worth. My future. At the bottom of the page, she wrote a final sentence: I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to build next. She closed the notebook, plugged in her tablet, and set an alarm. Tomorrow was another class. Another brick in the road forward. And for once, she wasn't afraid of where it might lead. Emily was starting to feel like she had two lives now. There was the new life, the one with the structured calendar, the calm mornings, the warm dinners, the steady rhythm of UX classes and therapy sessions. And then there was the old life. The one that lived in shadows, in memories, in the quiet hum of dread that never quite disappeared. She didn't talk about the old life during her classes. She didn't even bring it up during the first few therapy sessions, where most of the work centered around building safety and trust. But it hovered. Always. Like a passenger riding in the back seat, just quiet enough to let her forget it was there, until it wasn't. It was a Thursday afternoon when the call came. She had just finished her third week of the program. She was folding laundry and humming to herself while Mia colored at the table. The disposable phone rang, a number she didn't recognize. At first, she was going to ignore it. But something told her to answer. She wiped her hands on her jeans and picked it up. Hello. There was a pause. And then, Emily. Her heart dropped. The voice was too familiar. Too sharp. Too real. She hadn't heard it in years, but her body remembered before her mind did. It's me, the voice said again. Ryan. Mia looked up from her drawing. Emily turned her back to her daughter, voice tight. Why are you calling me? I didn't know how else to reach you. I saw you on that video. Her stomach turned. What video? Online. Some short clip. You were walking into a building. Someone said Elon Musk helped you. People are talking. Emily closed her eyes. Unbelievable. Look, I wanted to talk. I wanted to say I'm sorry. For what? For the bruises? The yelling? For nearly getting our daughter taken away? Or for vanishing the second things got hard? Ryan sighed. I'm clean now. I'm working. I'm not that guy anymore. Good, she said coldly. But I'm not that girl anymore either. There was a pause. I don't want to make trouble. I miss Mia. I want to see her. Her hand gripped the phone harder than she realized. You lost that right when you disappeared. Do you remember what I had to do to keep us safe? Do you know how many nights I thought we might not make it? You don't get to walk back in like nothing happened. I know I messed up, Ryan said, voice suddenly small. But I'm still her dad. No. You were her father. Once. But I'm the one who raised her. Protected her. Carried her through hell. Don't you dare take that lightly. Please, Emily. Just let me talk to her. She doesn't know who you are. Then let me fix that. You don't get to fix anything. Not now. Not through a phone call. And not by dragging her into more chaos. Ryan didn't respond. And that silence said everything. He wanted the easy version of forgiveness. The kind where he apologized and was instantly welcomed back. But real healing didn't work like that. Not for Emily. Not anymore. Lose this number, she said quietly. If you really care about Mia, then stay away. Let her grow up safe. Peaceful. Free of the past you left us to clean up. Then she hung up. Her hands were shaking. Her heart thundered against her ribs. She looked over at Mia, who was staring at her with wide, curious eyes. Was that a bad call? Mia asked. Emily knelt down beside her. Yeah, baby. But we're okay. I just had to say something important. Are we still safe? That question ripped something open in Emily. The fact that her daughter had to ask, that somewhere in her tiny brain the idea of "not safe" still lived, broke her heart all over again. "Yes," Emily whispered. "We're still safe. Nothing is going to hurt us anymore. I promise." That night, she didn't sleep much. She thought about how fragile progress really was, how a single voice from the past could shake the entire foundation she was trying to build. But she didn't regret her words. For once, she hadn't tried to please anyone. She hadn't softened herself to avoid conflict. She had stood up. She had drawn the line. And that was something. The next morning, she told Rachel, the therapist, everything. "You were incredibly brave," Rachel said. "Boundaries are hard. Especially with people who used to have power over us. I feel guilty. Like, part of me wanted to let him talk longer. Just to prove I'm not afraid anymore. But you didn't need to prove anything. Your safety, and Mia's, comes first. Guilt is a liar. It tells you you're doing something wrong when you're actually doing something strong. He said he's clean now. Said he wants to be in her life. That might be true. But recovery doesn't erase consequences. Being clean doesn't entitle him to access. You are allowed to protect your peace." Emily nodded, her throat tight. "Why does it still hurt?" "Because even when we heal, the scar tissue feels. You're grieving the fantasy that maybe he could have changed before it was too late. But you're also proving to yourself that you don't need him to feel whole." That landed like a stone in Emily's chest. Heavy. Honest. Right. "So what do I do now?" she asked. "You keep going. You keep building. And if you ever decide to revisit that relationship for Mia's sake, it's on your terms. With your rules. But not a moment before you're ready." Emily exhaled slowly. "Okay." That afternoon, she told Marcus what had happened, leaving out the details, but enough to explain why she might seem off. "That's life," he said. "You take 10 steps forward, and sometimes the past shows up to test if you really mean it. But you passed, Em. You're still moving." She thought about that a lot in the days that followed. How progress wasn't a straight line. It was messy. Full of setbacks and ghosts. But also full of new voices. Encouraging voices. Her classmates in the program had started messaging her, asking about assignments, sharing links to free resources, even venting about stress. She was part of something. Not just a system. A community. One afternoon, Rosa messaged her, "Hey, I saw your name on the leaderboard. You're crushing the UX track. Want to collab on the next group project?" Emily smiled. A month ago, she didn't know what UX even meant. Now she was being asked to lead a team. She replied, "Would love to. Let's build something great." And for the first time, she meant it. Because this wasn't just healing anymore. It was becoming. It was rising. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Emily sat at her kitchen table with a mug of tea in one hand and her tablet in the other, watching the notification blink, "Group project room, UX case study, join now." Her palms were sweaty. She hadn't led anything since, well, ever. At least, not anything official. But Rosa had asked her to take the lead on this assignment, and even though Emily had hesitated, something in her had said yes. Not because she thought she was the smartest. Not because she had everything figured out. But because for the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid of being seen. Not really. She clicked the link and joined the call. 3 faces popped up on the screen: Rosa, smiling wide from her tiny Florida kitchen, Devonte, leaning back in a chair with earbuds and a Detroit Lions hoodie, and a new name, Kira, who looked barely out of high school but had a sharpness in her eyes that said she'd already lived 2 lifetimes. "Hey Em," Rosa chirped. "We're all here. You ready to get this thing started?" Emily nodded and sat up straighter. "Yeah. Thanks for trusting me to lead. I'm still learning, but I think we can do something really great together." "That's the energy," Devontae said, raising a fist to the camera. "Let's go." The project was simple on paper: create a mock design for an app that solved a common everyday frustration, walk through the research and user flow, and present the solution in a virtual pitch by the end of the week. But the challenge wasn't just the task, it was the teamwork. Trusting strangers. Finding a shared vision. Balancing strengths. Emily opened a shared doc and started taking notes. "Let's start by talking pain points. What's something annoying that you wish an app could fix?" Kira jumped in. "Honestly? Public laundry. Like those machines in apartment buildings that eat quarters and don't tell you when your stuff's done. Total chaos." "Oh, yes," Rosa said. "Or when someone leaves their stuff in the dryer for hours and you're just stuck. What if we did an app for shared laundry spaces?" Emily said. "Track availability, reserve time slots, get notified when your load's done. Like a smart system that keeps people from fighting over dryers." "That's actually genius," Devontae said. "We could call it, wait for it, spin cycle." Everyone laughed. Emily grinned. "Okay, spin cycle it is. Let's divide and conquer. I'll map out the user journey, what it feels like from the moment someone walks into the laundry room to when they finish. Rosa, can you dig into design ideas? You have great instincts. Devontae, research similar apps and see what's already out there. Kira, can you draft some sample user interviews? We'll pretend we're talking to real tenants." "On it," Kira said. "I'll even interview my sister. She's always yelling about laundry drama." They worked for 2 hours straight, the call full of jokes and ideas and the kind of focused energy that felt like momentum. Emily found herself doing what she used to do naturally before life became all about surviving, organizing, encouraging, connecting dots. At the end of the session, Rosa messaged her privately, "Girl, you're really good at this. Like, team leader good. Proud of you." Emily stared at the message longer than she needed to. She'd spent so long doubting herself that every small affirmation felt like water to cracked earth. She replied, "Thanks. I'm just trying to build something real." That night, after Mia fell asleep on the couch mid-episode of her favorite cartoon, Emily sat alone and polished the user flow chart she'd started. She mapped the entire experience: arrival, scanning a QR code, reserving machines, payment options, real-time notifications, even community reviews for keeping laundry areas clean. She hadn't realized how much she loved this part, the storytelling through design. It was like building a world that actually made sense. Where people didn't have to suffer through the small things. Where thoughtfulness replaced chaos. She submitted the draft to the group, then opened a new tab and started researching UX internships. None of them were within reach yet. But the idea alone made her feel like there was something waiting for her beyond the next class. The next morning, she got a message from Marcus. "Hey, Em. Tasha flagged your group's work as a standout example. You're being invited to present to a guest panel next week, tech folks, startup mentors, maybe even some investors. Interested?" Emily's eyes widened. Her first reaction was to panic. But then she read the message again. Interested? Not ready. Not qualified. Just, interested. And she was. Absolutely, she replied. Count me in. When she told her team on the next group call, Rosa screamed. What? Girl, we're gonna be famous. Kira clapped. Emily. You did that. We did that, Emily corrected, smiling. But deep down, she knew this was a moment. A turning point. The kind of opportunity she'd never had when she was living hand to mouth. The kind that didn't come to women sleeping in cars or lining up at soup kitchens. But now, it had come. Because she'd shown up. Because she'd tried. The day of the presentation arrived faster than she expected. The panel wasn't massive. Just 4 people, 2 of them from early-stage startups, 1 from a non-profit tech incubator, and 1 representative from the Musk Foundation's innovation team. Still, Emily's hands shook slightly as she adjusted her camera and clicked "Join Meeting." "Good luck, rebuilder," Mia whispered before heading to the other room with a snack and crayons. That nickname had stuck in their home. And now, Emily wore it like armor. The team nailed the presentation. Emily introduced the project, walked through the problem they were solving, explained the emotional pain points of unreliable laundry access, and then took the panel through their clean, intuitive mock-up of the SpinCycle app. She could see the panelists nodding, smiling, jotting notes. One woman leaned forward and said, "This is actually brilliant. You all use design to solve something real in people's lives." "Who led this project?" Emily froze for a second. Then Rosa spoke up. "Emily did. She kept us on track, kept it human, and brought the whole idea together. Total natural." Emily felt her face flush, but she smiled. "Thank you. I just wanted to make something that actually helps. Something that makes everyday life a little less frustrating." The call ended with thank yous and encouragement, and within an hour, Marcus had messaged her again, "You blew them away." No promises yet, but one of the panelists asked if you'd be open to mentorship. "Big deal, Em. Very big." Emily sat back in her chair, her heart thudding. A month ago, she was sleeping on a damp blanket in a shelter hallway. Now someone was asking if she wanted to be mentored, in tech. "Forward," she whispered, echoing Elon's text from weeks ago. And she meant it more than ever. That night, she and Mia ordered pizza to celebrate. They danced in the living room, laughing, and Emily let herself believe, really believe, that life wasn't just about getting through the next storm. It could be about joy. About building. About becoming. And she was doing it. Not because someone saved her, but because when the chance came, she was brave enough to take it. Emily had always believed that mentors were for other people. People with degrees, stable jobs, LinkedIn profiles polished to a shine. Not for someone who had spent the better part of the past year trying to keep her daughter warm at night with 2 borrowed blankets and a plastic bag over a broken window. But the day after the presentation, the email came in. The subject line read, "Mentorship Invitation, Next Steps." She stared at it for almost 10 minutes before opening it, afraid it would vanish like a dream she wasn't supposed to keep. But it didn't vanish. It was real. The message was from a woman named Natalie Cheng, one of the panelists who'd watched her group's SpinCycle presentation. Natalie was a UX lead at a mid-sized tech company in Austin and had started a mentorship circle specifically for women in tech with non-traditional backgrounds. Her message was simple and warm, "Emily, I was deeply impressed by your leadership and empathy during your team's pitch. I'd love to invite you to join my mentorship group, where we meet virtually once a week to discuss career growth, job readiness, and advanced UX topics. No pressure, just possibility. Let me know if you're open." Emily reread it 3 times, then showed it to Marcus. "This is big," he said. "You should do it." "But I'm not. I mean, I'm still learning." "You're always going to be learning. That's the point. What if I'm not what she thinks I am?" Marcus looked her straight in the eye. "Emily, I think she sees you better than you see yourself." That sentence echoed in her head for days. Still, it took her until the night before the mentorship circle's first meeting to respond. She typed, "I'd be honored. Thank you for seeing something in me." The next evening, she joined the call. There were 5 women, all in different stages of life and learning. One was a single mom from Baltimore who used to work in food service. Another was a former flight attendant turned UI apprentice. Natalie started the session by asking everyone to introduce themselves, not by what they'd done before, but by what they were hoping to become. Emily thought carefully before speaking. I'm Emily. I live in LA. I'm a mom, a student in this UX reentry program, and I guess I'm hoping to become someone who can build tools that make people's lives easier. Not just flashier. Just better. The other women nodded. Natalie smiled. That's a beautiful mission. They spent the hour talking about the difference between UI and UX, how to balance empathy with innovation, and how to prepare a portfolio even if you didn't have traditional work experience. Your story is part of your strength, Natalie said. Tech has enough people who came from the same place. We need people who see the world differently. Who lived real problems, not just studied them. That line struck Emily like lightning. Your story is part of your strength. For so long, she had tried to bury her story, hide the parts of her that felt messy or broken. But maybe, just maybe, those parts were the very things that gave her work meaning. That night, after Mia fell asleep, Emily opened her portfolio for the first time. She'd been putting it off, thinking she didn't have anything worth including. But now, she pulled up the spin cycle project. She added screenshots. Described the problem they solved. Highlighted how her team had worked through user pain points with empathy. Then she wrote a short personal introduction. I come from a background not traditionally found in tech. I've lived experiences that taught me to value simplicity, clarity, and accessibility, not as buzzwords, but as essentials. I design with the user's emotions in mind because I've been the user who felt left out, confused, and forgotten. I believe good design should not only function, it should care. She hit save. And for once, she didn't feel like she was pretending. The next week, Natalie offered one-on-one sessions. Emily booked one. During the call, Natalie asked her what kind of roles she wanted to pursue. Honestly, I don't even know what I can aim for, Emily admitted. I haven't had a job in years. Don't let that stop you, Natalie said. You have transferable skills. You've led projects, you've presented under pressure, you've learned quickly. And most importantly, you've lived what many designers only theorize about, real human need. But will companies care? The right ones will. And the wrong ones don't deserve you. They spent 30 minutes rewriting Emily's resume. For the first time, Emily didn't list only her former waitressing or cashier jobs. They reframed her skills, project coordination from leading spin cycle, client empathy from her customer-facing work, problem-solving from years of managing on scarce resources. It's not a lie, Natalie said. It's context. And truthfully, it's what makes you valuable. Emily looked at the new draft and felt something strange. Pride. Not in a boastful way. But in a quiet, powerful way. She had always been resourceful. Resilient. Strategic. She just hadn't known those traits had names on a resume. Later that week, she shared the new version with Marcus, who gave her a big thumbs up. You're ready, he said. Apply for a junior role. Or an internship. Just try. She sent out 3 applications that night. She didn't expect much, just wanted to break the seal. But 3 days later, she got a reply. A startup in San Diego wanted to interview her for a paid internship. Her jaw dropped. She read the message again, then called Marcus in a panic. I don't have a car, she said. I can't commute to San Diego. It's remote, he replied, laughing. That's what makes it perfect. They just want to talk to you. You got this. The interview was short. The manager, a woman named Lacey, was warm and curious. She asked about spin cycle, and Emily spoke with clarity and calm. When asked what made her approach different from other applicants, she didn't stumble. She simply said, I've lived through a system that's designed to leave people behind. That's why I want to design systems that pull people in. The next day, she got the offer. A 3-month paid internship. Remote. Flexible hours. The salary wasn't huge, but it was more than she'd ever earned before. Emily sat at the kitchen table, staring at the screen, unable to believe it. Mia came running in with a sticker she'd made. Look. I made a badge. It says, Super Designer. That's you. Emily laughed through tears. You have no idea how perfect your timing is. She hugged her daughter tight, the weight of the moment sinking in. She had made it to the next step. Not because she was lucky. Not because someone handed her a miracle. But because when a door cracked open, she didn't just walk through it, she brought all of herself with her. For the first time, the reflection staring back at her in the tablet screen didn't look like a survivor pretending to be a professional. It looked like a woman who belonged. A designer. A mother. A leader in the making. The internship had only just begun, but Emily was already slipping into a new rhythm. Her mornings were measured by the glow of her laptop screen and the soft clicks of her mouse, her afternoons by the sound of Mia's laughter tumbling in from the living room as she stacked blocks or drew rainbows on printer paper. The work was challenging, real-world tasks, actual deadlines, but it was honest and fulfilling. Each project made her feel like she was contributing something, building a version of life that didn't just exist in theory but was beginning to take root in reality. It felt fragile sometimes, like walking across a bridge still under construction, but it held her weight. One Tuesday evening, she sat cross-legged on the floor, editing the layout for a feedback form prototype while Mia used her as a jungle gym. Hold still, Mommy. Mia squealed, trying to place a plastic tiara on her head. Emily giggled, turning slightly so her daughter wouldn't fall. I'm in the middle of something important, baby. Is it for your new work? Yeah. I need to finish this page before tomorrow morning. Mia climbed down, quiet for a moment. Then, with the seriousness only 5-year-olds can summon, she asked, So, are we rich now? Emily paused, blinking at her screen. What? You have a job. We have pizza now. We have toys. That means we're rich, right? Emily slowly turned to face her daughter. She didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or sit down and explain capitalism to a kindergartner. No, sweetheart, she said gently. We're not rich. But we have stuff now. We do. We have more than we used to. But being rich means having so much that you never have to worry. Do you still worry? Sometimes. Mia's brow furrowed. About what? Emily exhaled slowly. About making sure everything keeps going the way it is. That we have food. That you're safe and happy. That I do good at my job. Mia seemed to think that over. But I'm happy. And you're doing good. So maybe that's enough, Rich. Emily pulled her daughter into her lap and kissed the top of her head. You might be right. That night, after Mia had fallen asleep, Emily sat by the window with a notebook in her lap. She wrote down Mia's question at the top of the page, Are we rich now? Below it, she wrote, Not in money. Not yet. But maybe in something better. Maybe in hope. In warmth. In laughter. She paused, then added, And if I keep going, maybe one day we'll be rich in freedom. The next few days passed in a blur of work and reflection. At her mentorship session with Natalie, she shared the moment. It hit me harder than I expected, Emily said. Because when she asked that question, I realized I'd been holding my breath. I kept waiting for it all to fall apart again. Natalie nodded. Survivor's instinct. You're conditioned to expect collapse because collapse is what you knew. But what you're doing now? It's rewriting your nervous system. Every calm day is a new signal to your brain, it's okay to exhale. How long does that take? It's not a straight path. It comes in waves. But you're on the path. That's what matters. Emily nodded, silent for a moment. I want to give her the kind of life where she never has to ask that question again. Then keep building it. Brick by brick. Later that week, her manager at the internship assigned her a solo mini-project, redesigning the onboarding flow for a time-tracking tool. It was a test of trust, and Emily knew it. She threw herself into the work, staying up late researching user behavior, drafting wireframes, and testing each screen for clarity. At the end of the week, she submitted her prototype, heart pounding. An hour later, she got the feedback. It was glowing. Her manager wrote, clear, compassionate, intuitive. You've made a typically boring process feel human. Excellent work, Emily. She stared at the screen in disbelief. Then she opened the window, letting in the cool night air. It smelled like rain. Fresh and clean. Like starting over. That weekend, Emily and Mia walked to the park with 2 peanut butter sandwiches and a small bag of chips. The grass was a little muddy, but they found a dry bench near the swings. Do you like your job? Mia asked mid-bite. I do, Emily said. I like solving problems. And I like that I get to be creative. When I grow up, I want to do what you do. Emily smiled. Then you will. Do you think Elon Musk knows you're working now? The question made her laugh. I don't know, honey. Probably not. He helps a lot of people. You should tell him. Maybe I will. Maybe someday, I'll thank him. Mia looked up. For saving us. Emily shook her head. No. For giving me a chance to save myself. That night, after putting Mia to bed, Emily sat down at her tablet and wrote a letter. She didn't know if anyone would read it. But she wrote it anyway. Dear Mr. Musk, you don't know me. A few weeks ago, you passed me and my daughter while we were begging in the rain. You stopped. You asked questions. You offered help. You didn't pity me, you empowered me. Because of that moment, I'm now in a program that's changed my life. I'm learning UX design. I'm interning. I'm building a life that no longer feels like a survival exercise. And my daughter, she laughs more. She sleeps peacefully. She believes her mommy is a superhero. I just wanted to say thank you. Not for saving us. But for believing that someone like me was worth investing in. You were right. I was. With gratitude, Emily Carter she sent it to the program coordinator, asking them to pass it along if they ever had the chance. Then she shut her tablet and looked around her apartment. It was small. The couch had a spring poking out. The rug was a little stained. But it was theirs. And for the first time, it felt like a home. Not because of the walls or the furniture. But because of the warmth inside it. The next morning, Mia held her hand on the way to daycare and whispered, I like our new life. Emily squeezed her hand. Me too, baby. Me too. They walked on in silence, the city humming around them, not as a threat anymore, but as a rhythm they were learning to dance with. And somewhere in the back of Emily's mind, she heard her daughter's question again. Are we rich now? And this time, the answer came not with doubt, but certainty. We're getting there. Emily sat at the counter with her laptop open, the warm glow from the screen lighting her face as she scrolled through email. The inbox was busier these days, internship updates, mentorship notes, and a few advertisements she used to delete unread. Then she spotted a new message with no subject. Her heart skipped. The sender was anonymous. She clicked it, and the body read. Emily, your letter was beautiful. I read every word. Thank you. E. Her breath caught. Just a single line, but it echoed through her chest. She stared at the message as Mia bounded in, goggles around her neck and goggles in hand. "Mama! I made a spaceship," she yelled, pointing to a silver cardboard box with paper wings. Emily smiled, blinking back tears. "It's amazing, baby. Just like you." Mia ran to her, and Emily scooped her into her lap. The laptop glowed blue next to them. The message was still there. She scrolled up, reread it. I read every word. For months she'd wondered if Elon even knew she existed past that rainy night. Now she knew he did. It made every dusty morning and late-night Zoom feel seen. Evening fell, and Mia fell asleep early from her excitement. Emily stayed up, rereading the email again and again. It felt surreal, like she was dangling between two worlds, the one she'd fought to build for herself, and the one beyond, where a stranger's reply could still give her hope. She pictured Elon reading her letter, maybe in a late-night study, or during a break at an office far away. The thought made her heart ache. The next day, she met with Natalie during her weekly mentorship. She showed her the email. Natalie's eyes filled with warmth. "That feeling you had in a cafe, that hope you felt when the food arrived, that wasn't luck, this is confirmation. He's still paying attention. But more than that, you're attention worthy." Emily touched the screen. "Does any of that, not having to pay back, not fearing a catch, it feel scary?" Emily paused. "Yes. I want to trust it. But everything in me wonders why." Natalie nodded. "That's fair. Trust isn't blind. It's tested. But you've already tested the world, you survived the worst. So maybe this is the chance to test kindness." That phrase, test kindness, echoed in her head all day. She carried it while designing her UX tasks. She carried it while preparing for her next internship meeting. Even during dinner, as Mia told her about her pretend spaceship missions, Emily's chest felt lighter. That evening, she texted Elon via the same proxy number. "Thank you. I'm still learning. I want you to know what a difference your choice made." Seconds later, his reply came. "You already are difference. Keep rising." Her breath caught. You are a difference. Not just someone changed, but someone changing others. She slipped the phone into her pocket, walked Mia to the window to gaze at passing streetlights, and whispered, "Mama's still rising, baby. All the way." The next week, at her internship, Emily was working on a group usability test for a new app feature when she got pulled into a quick team meeting. The manager, smiling, said she'd forwarded Emily's feedback to Elon's foundation team. They'd seen the prototype and appreciated the user-first approach. He asked, "Would you be open to co-developing a small pilot with us? Something practical, something with real impact." Emily stared. Her mind raced. Co-develop with Elon's team? She steadied herself. "Yes," she replied. "Absolutely." That evening, back in her apartment, she stared at her reflection in the dark window. The city lights shimmered behind her, faint sparks of possibility. She rested her hand on her ribcage, where the old fear used to live, and whispered, "This is real." Downstairs in a private building on the same street, Elon Musk stood by a window, phone in hand. He didn't type. He just watched her name appear in a response. Somewhere in that moment, two determined people, different worlds apart, had decided to trust what was small and yet unstoppable. Above them, the sky was still. But beneath it, a ripple. Sometimes, just sometimes, a single act of recognition can become a movement that reaches farther than any rocket. It was a Thursday when the email arrived, quiet and unassuming, sitting there between a calendar reminder and a coupon from a grocery store she hadn't been to in months. The subject line read, "Innovation Panel, Speaker Invite." Emily nearly deleted it, assuming it was spam. But something about the sender address caught her eye. It was from the Musk Foundation's outreach team. Her pulse jumped as she clicked. The email was short, professional, and utterly surreal. Dear Emily, on behalf of the Musk Foundation's Social Innovation Panel, we would like to invite you to speak at our upcoming virtual summit focused on resilience through design. Your story, growth, and contributions through the Reentry UX program have deeply moved our partners and attendees. We believe your voice will inspire many. Please confirm if you are available for a 15-minute session to share your journey. She stared at the screen, mouth slightly open, barely breathing. Mia was across the room, hunched over her coloring book, humming off-key. Emily whispered, "What?" and then again, louder, "What?" Mia looked up. "What happened?" "I got invited to speak. At a big event. They want me to tell my story." Mia blinked. "Like a show?" "Like a show for grown-ups, yeah. Can I come?" "I don't think it works that way, baby. But I'll tell them all about you." Mia grinned, unfazed. "Tell them I'm your boss." Emily laughed, the sound shaking something loose in her chest. She hadn't even said yes yet, but the pride in her daughter's face had already decided for her. She typed her response before fear could talk her out of it, "Yes. I'd be honored." The following week was a blur of nerves and preparation. She practiced her talk in front of the mirror, in the shower, even while stirring spaghetti for dinner. Marcus offered to help her rehearse over Zoom, and during their third run-through, he leaned back in his chair and said, "You've got this. You speak with something no one else on that panel will have, truth. Not theory. Lived experience." "What if I choke?" she asked, heart thumping. "Then you take a breath. And keep going. Because they didn't invite you for polish, they invited you for realness." The night before the event, she tucked Mia into bed with extra care, kissed her on the forehead, and sat at her desk, staring at her notes. The screen showed the summit schedule, panelists from MIT, nonprofit leaders, engineers, innovators. And her. She felt like an imposter among giants. But then she remembered Natalie's words, "Your story is part of your strength." She closed her notes, trusting her voice. The next morning, she woke before dawn, dressed in a simple navy blouse and pulled her hair back. When Mia saw her, she gasped. "You look like a famous lady." "Maybe just for today," Emily said, heart pounding. The virtual waiting room opened. She clicked join. Then she waited. When the screen lit up, there were hundreds of participants already logged in. Some had titles under their names. Most were strangers. And then the host introduced her. "Our next speaker comes from the most innovative sector of all, real life. Please welcome Emily Carter." Her image took over the screen. She saw herself staring back, nervous, hopeful, alive. She took a breath. "Hi. I'm Emily. A year ago, I was living in a car with my daughter. I was scared, ashamed, and convinced that my story didn't matter. Then someone stopped to ask who I was. Not just what I needed. That question changed everything." She spoke for 15 minutes, about survival, about rebuilding, about learning design not in a lab, but through life. She told them about SpinCycle, about user empathy that comes from sleeping on floors and standing in broken laundry rooms. And she ended with a line she hadn't planned. "Sometimes, design isn't about making something new. Sometimes, it's about making space for someone who was never meant to be in the room. Today, I'm in that room. And I plan to hold the door open." The screen was silent. Then applause. Dozens of comments poured in. "Powerful. Thank you for your courage. You reminded me why I started in this field. This is what innovation looks like." She logged off, stunned. Mia ran to her, arms flung wide. "Did you tell them I'm your boss?" "I did," Emily said, scooping her up. "You were the star of the show." Her inbox flooded. Mentorship offers. Job interview invitations. A tech podcast asked if she'd do an interview. A small design firm in Oregon asked if she'd consult on a project focused on shelters. One note stood out, short and familiar. "You lit that room on fire. You just leveled up." Emily stared at the message, then slowly typed back, "Thank you. I'm finally starting to believe it." That night, she walked out to the small balcony of her apartment, looking out at the glow of LA beneath her. She wrapped herself in a sweater, breathing in the quiet. Her past still lived somewhere behind her, but it no longer defined her. She wasn't just a survivor now. She was a speaker. A designer. A builder. A mother. And maybe, one day soon, a mentor to someone else climbing their own impossible ladder. Below her, the street hummed with traffic and light. Above her, the stars blinked like reminders. And in her chest, a new certainty pulsed. She wasn't waiting for change anymore. She was becoming it. The first real test came 3 weeks after the summit. Emily had begun to find her rhythm, not just in her internship, but in life. Each day she dropped Mia off at daycare, returned home, and dove into her work with a mix of focus and quiet joy. Her mentor, Natalie, had told her to expect a turning point. "Growth isn't always gentle," she had said. "Sometimes, the next level looks a lot like the edge of a cliff." That cliff arrived in the form of an email from her internship supervisor: "We're scaling back. Budget cuts. We won't be able to extend your contract past the current term. Your last day will be the end of next month." Emily read the message 3 times before it sank in. Her stomach dropped, that old familiar twist of panic rising like bile in her throat. For a moment, she sat frozen, her hands hovering over the keyboard, unable to move. Then came the voice in her head, the old one, the scared one. "Of course. You thought this was permanent. You thought you belonged. You're one lucky break away from losing it all." She stood up quickly, pacing the room. Mia was napping in the next room. The apartment was quiet, except for the low hum of a neighbor's TV through the wall. Emily stared at the blank screen in her living room mirror. Her reflection looked different now, more solid, but inside, she felt the floor shifting again. Later that evening, she told Marcus on a call. "So that's it?" she asked, trying to sound braver than she felt. "Back to square one?" "No," he said firmly. "Not square one. You've got a resume. A portfolio. Contacts. Experience. You're miles ahead of where you started. Don't let that fear voice tell you otherwise. But it feels the same. That's trauma talking. The fear's familiar, so your brain says danger. But you're not the same woman. You're stronger now. And you've got options." That night, she couldn't sleep. She got up, paced the living room, and finally opened her laptop. She pulled up the summit recording, the video of her talk. She watched herself speak. Her voice was clear, her story powerful. She didn't look like a woman about to lose anything. She looked like someone who had already overcome the worst and was still standing. Emily opened a new tab. She started applying. Not just for internships, but for jobs. Real jobs. Junior roles. Entry-level UX designer positions. She sent out 10 applications that night. By the end of the week, 20 more. Natalie called her that Friday. "I heard the news," she said. "I'm sorry they didn't fight harder to keep you." "It's okay," Emily said. "I'm not done." "Good. Because I've got someone I want you to meet." She connected Emily with a recruiter at a mid-sized software company in San Francisco. The woman, Rachel, had also been a single mother before breaking into tech. "We look for people like you," Rachel said. "Real problem solvers. People who think with their hearts, not just their heads." A week later, Emily had her first interview. The hiring manager had watched her summit speech. You're unforgettable, he told her. And we need designers who care as much as you do. She left the call floating. Not because it guaranteed anything, but because it didn't feel like pity. It felt like recognition. Over the next 2 weeks, Emily juggled her final internship tasks with back-to-back interviews. Some went well. Some didn't. But she never stopped trying. She kept showing up, even when the fear whispered she wasn't ready. On the night before her internship ended, she and Mia had a picnic on the floor, grilled cheese, juice boxes, and a tiny chocolate cake. "Is it your birthday?" Mia asked. "No, baby. Just a goodbye party." "To who?" "To the job I've had the last few months." "Are we going to be okay?" Emily paused, looking at her daughter. "Yeah," she said softly. "We're going to be okay." The next morning, she logged off from her internship laptop for the last time. She felt a pang, of course. But also something else, relief. The fear didn't own her this time. It was there, yes, but so was resilience. Later that day, an unfamiliar number called her. She almost didn't answer. But something nudged her to pick up. "Hi, is this Emily Carter?" "Yes. This is Rachel, from Golden Loop." Her heart jumped. "Hi. We just wrapped our hiring round, and the team unanimously agreed, your story, your skill set, your portfolio, your presence, it's exactly what we're looking for. We'd like to offer you the junior UX designer role. Full-time. Remote for now, with relocation support if you're open to moving later." Emily's hand flew to her mouth. She couldn't breathe for a second. "You're serious?" "Absolutely." The number she quoted made Emily's knees buckle. It wasn't just enough, it was life-changing. "I don't even know what to say," Emily whispered. "You don't have to say anything. Just let us know you're in." Emily didn't hesitate. "I'm in." She hung up and sat in silence, the gravity of it settling in. Mia walked into the room, still wearing her princess dress. "Did you get a new job?" "Yeah, baby. I did. Can we get new markers now?" Emily laughed, tears in her eyes. "We can get the whole box." That night, she called Natalie, who whooped with joy. She called Marcus, who screamed into the phone. "I told you," he said. "You were never going backward. You were leveling up." And finally, as Mia drifted off beside her on the couch, she typed one more message. To the same anonymous address as before. "I got the job. A real one. The kind with benefits. The kind that builds futures. Thank you for seeing me that day. It was the first step. But I've walked every one since." She hesitated, then hit send. For the first time in her life, she felt not just like she'd survived, but like she was winning. This wasn't just her turning point. It was the beginning of everything that would follow. Emily had never imagined that one day she would walk through the door of a place to call her own, not just an apartment, but a real home. The moment felt surreal, as if she were stepping through a portal from her old life of uncertainty into something solid and promising. The tiny 2-bedroom apartment was modest, but it was theirs. The sun streamed through the windows, casting warm light on the fresh paint and new floors. Mia ran ahead, her laughter echoing through the rooms as she explored. Emily carried the last box inside, feeling a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. She had spent years dreaming of this moment, clutching onto hope during cold nights and endless days of searching for stability. And now, here it was, a place where she and Mia could build their future. The walls weren't just walls. They were a canvas. A place where birthdays would be celebrated, homework completed, and quiet evenings shared. She placed Mia's favorite stuffed animal on the windowsill and turned to the living room. A soft knock on the door startled her. She opened it to find Natalie standing there, holding a bouquet of wildflowers. Welcome home, Natalie smiled, stepping inside. You earned it. Emily's throat tightened. Thank you. I still can't believe it's real. Natalie handed her the flowers. It's real because you made it real. Every step you took, every challenge you faced, you created this. They sat together on the floor, surrounded by boxes. So, what's next? Natalie asked. Now. We live here. We make this place a home. But I want to keep growing, keep learning. I want Mia to have everything I never did. Emily's eyes shone with determination. I want to be a designer who creates for people like us, people who need more than just pretty interfaces. People who need real solutions. Natalie nodded. That's exactly why you're here. Over the next few weeks, Emily's days filled with new routines. Mia started at a nearby elementary school. Emily began working full-time remotely for Golden Loop, diving into projects that focused on community-centered design. Each evening, after putting Mia to bed, she sketched ideas for her own side project, a mobile app designed to connect families in crisis with resources and support. The work energized her, but the transition wasn't without challenges. Some nights, exhaustion seeped in, threatening to undo all she had built. She often caught herself staring out the window, wondering if the next storm would wash away her progress. One particularly tough day, she received a call from her mother. The voice on the other end was heavy with worry. Emily, we need to talk. Dad's not doing well. The news struck like a thunderclap. Emily's parents had struggled with addiction and estrangement for years. Reconnecting was complicated and painful. But something inside her shifted. I want to help, she said quietly. I want to try. For the first time in years, Emily made plans to visit her hometown. She packed a bag and booked a train ticket, bracing herself for a journey not just through miles, but through memories and emotions. The train ride was long and winding, offering quiet moments to reflect. She thought about the little girl she once was, the mistakes made, the love lost, and the resilience that had carried her through. When she arrived, the familiar streets felt both foreign and home. Her mother met her at the station, tears and tentative smiles exchanged. Over the next days, Emily navigated difficult conversations with her parents, painful truths laid bare alongside tentative hope. She saw glimpses of the family she had yearned for as a child, imperfect but real. Returning home, Emily felt lighter, as if healing had begun not only for her parents, but for herself. Back in her apartment, Mia greeted her with hugs and stories about her first week at school. Emily held her close, grateful for the anchor her daughter provided. That night, she sat at her desk, fingers poised over the keyboard. She began writing a blog post titled "Home Isn't Just a Place." She wrote about her journey, the importance of connection, and the power of forgiveness. As the words flowed, she realized that the walls of their new home weren't just a shelter, they were the foundation of a new story. One built on love, growth, and the courage to face whatever came next. Emily never expected that her path would cross again with people from her past, people she thought she had left behind forever. It started on a rainy afternoon when she was out running errands with Mia, the child bundled in a bright yellow raincoat that made her look like a tiny sunflower against the gray city streets. They ducked into a small cafe to escape the downpour. As Emily waited in line, her eyes scanned the room, searching for a table. That's when she saw him, a face from a chapter of her life she thought was closed. Jason, her high school friend and once her closest confidant, sat alone by the window, nursing a coffee. His eyes lifted and locked with hers. For a moment, the years melted away. They smiled awkwardly, unsure whether to greet or avoid. Emily felt a strange cocktail of emotions, nostalgia, regret, curiosity. She hesitated, then took a deep breath and approached. "Jason?" she asked softly. "Emily. Wow, it's been, what? 10 years?" His voice was warm but cautious. They sat together, sipping their drinks as the rain drummed steadily outside. Jason shared how he'd stayed in town, working as a community organizer trying to make a difference in neighborhoods hit hard by economic downturns. Emily told him about her journey, the struggles, the small victories, the unexpected opportunity with Golden Loop. He listened, nodding, and then said, "You know, I run a program for young adults trying to break out of cycles of poverty and homelessness. You'd be perfect as a guest speaker." The invitation surprised her. "Me? I'm still learning." "You're further than you think. You've been through what they're going through now." He listened, nodding, and then said, "You know, I run a program for young adults trying to break out of cycles of poverty and homelessness. You'd be perfect as a guest speaker." The invitation surprised her. "Me? I'm still learning. You're further than you think. You've been through what they're going through now. You can show them it's possible." They exchanged numbers, and over the next few weeks, Emily found herself drawn back into the community she'd once fled. She visited the center Jason ran, a warm space filled with mismatched furniture, bright posters, and people hungry for hope. Emily shared her story with the group, honestly and vulnerably. She talked about nights spent sleeping in cars, the sting of rejection, and the slow climb toward stability. The room was silent but attentive. After her talk, hands raised with questions, and one young woman approached her quietly. "You make it sound possible," she said. "Like I could get out too." Emily smiled, feeling the weight of responsibility and possibility settle on her shoulders. As weeks passed, Emily began volunteering regularly, co-leading workshops on job applications, interview skills, and basic design thinking. Each session reminded her of how far she'd come, and how much further she wanted to go. She also reconnected with Jason on a personal level, their friendship deepening into something neither had expected. They shared long conversations about dreams, fears, and the scars of their pasts. One evening, as they walked along the city's river walk, Jason stopped and looked at her. "You've changed the narrative, Emily. You're not just surviving, you're leading." The word struck a chord. It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about creating pathways for others, about paying forward the kindness and chances she'd been given. But old doubts lingered. Could she balance this new role with her full-time job and motherhood? Was she ready to step fully into this kind of leadership? Then, one chilly morning, Emily received a call that tested her resolve. Mia's daycare was closing temporarily due to renovations, and with no backup childcare, Emily faced a choice: take time off work or risk losing her new job. She sat at the kitchen table, feeling the weight of exhaustion pressing down. Jason called just as she was about to give in to despair. "Hey," he said gently. "I heard about the daycare. Listen, we've got an emergency shelter that needs a part-time coordinator. It's flexible hours, and it might be a good fit while you figure things out." Emily blinked. It was the kind of opportunity she never expected to come her way. She thought of Mia and the fragile balance they maintained. She thought of Natalie's advice to lean into community. "I'm interested," she said finally. Taking on the new role meant juggling more, but Emily felt a spark of purpose reignite. Over the next months, she found herself weaving a new tapestry of life, working full-time at Golden Loop, volunteering and coordinating at the shelter, and most importantly, being present for Mia. The challenges were real: late nights, constant scheduling puzzles, moments of overwhelm. But each success, each small victory, made the struggle worthwhile. One afternoon, while organizing a drive for warm clothes at the shelter, Emily saw a young mother holding a toddler, eyes tired but hopeful. The woman looked familiar, and when their eyes met, Emily recognized the same fear and resilience she once carried. She approached gently, offering a warm smile. "I'm Emily. I was once where you are now. There's a way forward. I'm here to help." The woman's face softened, tears glistening. "Thank you. I don't know what I'd do without this place." That moment crystallized everything. Emily realized that her journey wasn't just about personal success. It was about community, connection, and lifting others as she climbed. One evening, as she sat on her apartment balcony watching the city lights blink awake, Jason joined her. They talked about future plans, expanding the shelter's programs, creating partnerships, advocating for better policies. Emily felt a swell of hope. She had come full circle, not running from her past, but embracing it, transforming it into a force for good. Her life was no longer defined by fear or scarcity, but by resilience, connection, and purpose. The rain had passed. The sun was rising on a new day. The days grew longer, and with each sunrise, Emily felt the weight of decisions pressing on her shoulders. Her life was a delicate balancing act, a full-time job demanding more creativity and responsibility, volunteer work that pulled at her heart, and the unending needs of Mia, her bright, curious daughter. There were moments when it felt like she was walking a tightrope stretched taut over a canyon of uncertainty. Then came the email that made her stop everything. It was from a prestigious design firm in Seattle, an offer for a senior UX designer role with a generous salary and the chance to lead her own team. The opportunity was the kind she had dreamed about during long nights when hope flickered like a candle in the wind. But accepting meant uprooting her life. Moving away from the city where she'd found stability, the friends she'd made, the community she was beginning to nurture. And most importantly, moving away from the school Mia loved and the daycare she trusted. Emily stared at the screen, heart pounding. The choice felt like standing at a fork in the road where every path carried risk and reward. She talked it over with Jason one evening, pacing her small apartment while Mia slept. Seattle could be a fresh start, she said. A bigger platform. But what about Mia? Her world is here. Jason listened quietly. Sometimes, growth requires sacrifice, he said. But it's okay to be scared. It means you care. Natalie joined the conversation the next day over coffee. You've earned this chance, she said firmly. But you have to define what success means for you. Is it just career advancement, or is it about the life you want to build? Emily nodded, thinking about her journey. The woman she had been, the homeless mother begging in the rain, would never have dreamed of this choice. Now, she had options. That was progress. But it was also pressure. Over the following weeks, Emily juggled interviews, conference calls, and parenting with the growing anxiety of making the right decision. She talked to Mia's teachers, neighbors, and support network, gathering perspectives. The city councilwoman she'd met through the shelter encouraged her to stay, citing ongoing local initiatives to improve support for families like theirs. Yet the allure of Seattle's tech scene and the potential to influence design on a larger scale tugged at her ambitions. One rainy night, Emily sat by the window, watching droplets trace patterns on the glass. She pulled out her journal, the one she'd kept since the early days of homelessness. Flipping through pages filled with fear, hope, and determination, she realized something important. Her story wasn't just about moving forward, but about staying true to herself. The next morning, she wrote a list, not just of pros and cons, but of values. Family, stability, growth, community, balance. The list grew long, messy, but clarifying. She talked to Mia too, in her simple way. Mommy might have to go far away for work, she said, but I want to stay here with my friends. The honesty of the moment brought tears. Emily realized that this decision wasn't just hers, it was theirs. After many sleepless nights and heart-to-hearts, Emily made her choice. She would decline the Seattle offer. Instead, she negotiated with Golden Loop for a leadership role focused on community-driven projects in her city, with the flexibility to work remotely when needed. It wasn't the highest-paying job, but it aligned with her values. With Jason's support, she expanded her volunteer work, helping launch a new initiative that paired tech mentors with at-risk youth. Mia thrived in school, and their little apartment blossomed with love and laughter. The crossroads had been daunting, but Emily's choice gave her peace. She learned that success wasn't just climbing the ladder, but building a foundation that could hold her family and herself. The chapter of uncertainty closed with a new beginning, one rooted in courage, love, and the wisdom to choose what truly mattered. Life rarely unfolds in neat, predictable patterns, and Emily was about to face a test unlike any she had encountered before. Just as she settled into her new role at Golden Loop and expanded her community work, an unexpected crisis struck. One evening, as she was preparing dinner for Mia, her phone buzzed with a flurry of messages. A nearby homeless shelter, the very one she had helped coordinate, had been hit by a fire. The building was severely damaged, and dozens of people who relied on it for warmth, food, and safety were suddenly left without support. Emily's heart sank. She thought of the faces she knew, the families struggling to rebuild their lives, and the fragile threads holding their community together. She immediately reached out to Jason, who was coordinating the emergency response. Together, they mobilized volunteers, arranged temporary accommodations, and launched a fundraising campaign. The days that followed tested every ounce of Emily's strength and resolve. Meetings stretched late into the night. Logistics needed to be handled with precision. Emotions ran high among those affected. Yet, in the midst of chaos, Emily found moments of profound humanity. A young mother thanked her with tearful eyes, clutching her child close. A teenager who had once been homeless now helped distribute blankets and food. Emily realized this crisis was more than a disaster, it was a call to action, a chance to reaffirm the community's resilience. But the pressure mounted. Balancing her demanding job, volunteer efforts, and motherhood became a tightrope act with no room for error. One night, exhausted and overwhelmed, Emily sat on her apartment floor surrounded by papers and plans. Doubt crept in. Was she enough? Could she carry this burden without breaking? In the quiet, Mia's soft footsteps approached. The little girl crawled into Emily's lap, wrapping her arms tightly around her mother's neck. "Mommy, you're my hero," Mia whispered. The simple words ignited a fire inside Emily. She was not alone. With renewed determination, Emily rallied her team, forged new partnerships with local businesses and government agencies, and pushed forward to rebuild the shelter stronger than before. Weeks passed. The community came together in ways Emily had only dreamed of. Volunteers, donors, and advocates united with a shared vision. Slowly, the shelter rose from the ashes, a symbol of hope and renewal. On opening day, Emily stood with Jason and the people whose lives had been touched by the project. Mia played nearby, her laughter mingling with the hum of a bustling room filled with warmth and possibility. Emily's eyes filled with tears, not of sorrow, but of triumph. The final test had not broken her, it had strengthened her. She realized that true success lay not in avoiding hardship but in meeting it head-on, with heart and grit. The journey had been long and arduous, but the destination was worth every struggle. As the sun set on that unforgettable day, Emily reflected on the lessons she had learned, that community is a powerful force, that resilience is born from connection, and that love is the greatest catalyst for change. Her story, a story of pain, perseverance, and purpose, was far from over. But now, she knew she was ready for whatever came next. Emily stood on the balcony of her apartment, the city lights flickering below like stars scattered across the earth. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of rain-soaked pavement and blooming jasmine from the plants she'd nurtured over the past months. Mia was asleep inside, her small chest rising and falling in peaceful rhythm. For the first time in years, Emily felt a deep sense of calm, a quiet confidence born not from the absence of struggle, but from having faced it head-on and come through stronger. The journey from that rainy night when Elon Musk's unexpected kindness shattered her world to this moment had been filled with twists, heartbreaks, victories, and hard-earned wisdom. She thought about the people who had helped her along the way, Natalie, Jason, the community she'd built, and the countless strangers who had shown kindness when she needed it most. But more than anything, she thought about herself. The girl who had once begged in the rain had grown into a woman who believed in her worth, who fought for her dreams, and who knew the power of love and sacrifice. Emily's phone buzzed. A message from Jason appeared. "We did it. The shelter is thriving. Let's celebrate soon." She smiled and typed back, "Absolutely. Here's to new beginnings." As the dawn crept closer, Emily reflected on the lessons her journey had taught her. Life was unpredictable and often harsh, but it was also full of opportunities for growth and redemption. Love, whether from family, friends, or the community, was the compass that guided her through the darkest nights. She realized that her true success wasn't measured by career titles or financial gain, but by the lives she touched and the hope she inspired. That night, Emily wrote a final entry in her journal, words flowing like a gentle river. "Life is full of surprises, but love will always lead the way. We are stronger than we think, braver than we believe, and more capable than we know. Every ending is a new beginning, and every challenge is a chance to rise." The sun rose, painting the sky with hues of pink and gold. Emily took a deep breath, feeling the promise of tomorrow. Her story was just beginning, and this time, she held the pen. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?